Good evening, vinyl community, YouTube, record enthusiasts, music lovers, et al., whoever, stumbling across this video this evening. Good evening. Hi, I hope everybody's well and having a good week. Yeah. Okay, so Rob here for another video. This is a very much belated video response to Alan's Static Traveller, who uploaded a video probably 2 or 3 weeks ago now entitled "How Do We Value and Enjoy Our Collections?" Okay, so obviously quite a lot of quite a broad question there, which obviously gets you thinking, and he did a pretty good response to that. Obviously he would have done because it was his question. But he put it out there for us to ponder on and do a reply. And it was my intention to do one. And unfortunately, because of life getting in the way, as per, which has been a bit of a constant for me for the last 2 or 3 months. Yeah, I never got around to doing it. In fact, I just completely forgot all about it. Until Dale, Gatefold 33, did a very, reminded me and did a very, very good response on Sunday. Where he sort of took it head on and answered it very well, in his own way and very honestly, openly. And it was really, really interesting. And it got me thinking because there was quite a lot of similarities in terms of his record collecting journeys were quite different, but there were crossovers, which obviously I recognised, and it sort of made me think. Well, perhaps I should give this a go and see how I can answer it. So, we're already 2.5 minutes in, and I haven't said really anything yet. So I'm going to try not to waffle too much. As you're probably aware, I usually only get about 30 minutes memory time on my phone, and then it usually clicks off and then goes on to a separate video. If that being the case, if I had an editing suite on a proper PC, I could probably put together a really good, succinct video to this. As it is, I've got about 27 minutes to stumble my way through this. So there isn't going to be any format to this. This is going to be pretty much a kind of stream of consciousness. I have given it a little bit of thought, but I didn't want to I started, like with everything, you start overthinking it, and then it just becomes just a mess. And you just think, well, I don't, it's just waffle. So, but yeah, so essentially a bit of, some of this I've already discussed on previous videos, or there is going to be crossover. So some of these facts, for those who watch my channel regularly, you're probably already aware of this. So go back to the roots of where it all started, I guess. Probably when I was about 4 or 5, so early 70s. And my mother had this album, not this exact copy. This is unfortunately that went a long time ago. But this is the album that sort of introduced me to pop music and the Beatles, basically. So up until this point, I'd only really sort of had story albums and books and sort of listening to the radio and this kind of and all this. So my brother and I just were absolutely just blown away with this. Just the idea that a pop record could be so crazily eclectic, and just the sheer diversity of the styles and songs within, the songwriting, Even at a really young age, I just found it absolutely just fascinating, and obviously didn't understand most of the lyrics, but the feel and the emotion that was being put over certainly resonated, and yeah, started me on a journey to listen to more. And obviously, I was probably only, like I say, 4 or 5 at the time. I wasn't earning any money, so obviously, records were difficult to come by, and they were usually only kind of Christmas and birthdays, given as gifts, etc. But yeah, I was always listening to my brother playing music. He was a huge music fan right from the outset. Um, and obviously, him being 6 years older than me in the early 70s, he was sort of 12, 13 years old and was already sort of amassing, a reasonable record collection. And yeah, there was kind of, but there was a kind of difference with the stuff that we were we used to listen to in a way, because obviously he was so much older than me, so he was already getting into, at sort of 12, 13, he was very much just getting into the kind of pop music at the time. So these were ones that were kind of in heavy rotation that I used to listen to, and obviously he wouldn't let me play them because he was an older sibling, and older siblings never get on the best of times. Well, siblings don't get on the best of times, not when you're that age anyway. And I was the kind of annoying little squib, and so it was always me kind of listening at the door, trying to sort of pick up on these weird and wonderful sounds that were coming from the dining room where my dad's stereo was. So and it was kind of these kind of albums that I was hearing. So Sweet Fanny Adams, amazing first album by Sweet. Just the sheer energy and power of this record. I mean, this was probably like the first metal or heavy rock album I'd ever kind of heard, and I just thought this was absolutely amazing. For a 6, 7 year old kid listening to this, absolutely mind blowing. Incredible. And yeah, I still absolutely love this record to this day. I don't play it that often, maybe once or twice a year, perhaps. Record collection's grown to the point, and I know Dale will kind of empathise here. Your record collection gets to a size. I mean, mine isn't sort of in the thousands like his is. It's certainly approaching 1,000. But you do get to the stage whereby you reach a bit of a kind of saturation point. So anyway, that was another one that was always being played. It was a big favourite of my brother's, and that I grew to absolutely love. Sheet Music 10cc, their second album. This I do play probably. Well, I used to play it all the time. I used to play this record almost weekly. I just loved it so much. All through my teens, I used to listen to this. Took a tape of it actually on camping holiday that I went on a little kind of mono tape recorder. Those little sort of oblong things, Sony things, sharp things used to have. And I just listened to that the whole week, along with, I think, Synchronicity, The Police, and Let's Dance, David Bowie. So what would that have been, 1983? Yeah, I think. So that was another one that my brother was always playing. Queen, Sheer Heart Attack, another monster rock album, incredibly inventive rock pop, that just just hasn't dated at all. And arguably, I don't think any of these albums have dated. And hence why I still play them and go back to them. So in terms of value, when you talk about how do you value your music, I mean, these records are intrinsically aren't worth anything really at all. You can pick these up for well, certainly sheet music you can pick up for a couple of quid, 2 or 3 quid, a decent original copy. Probably the same with She Art Attack, maybe a little bit more for an original copy. Sweet Fanny Adams, a little bit more, maybe 15, 20 quid. But yeah, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, they're not particularly sought after or rare albums, but for me, these are just absolutely just priceless, because they're just cornerstones of what I was listening to when I was very, very young. And probably because it was almost like a taboo, because my brother was so always trying to stop me from listening to this music because it was his music. It just made me want to listen to it even more. So I kind of almost valued it more maybe than I would have done had he not been trying to prevent me from listening to it. So, but anyway, yeah, and sort of I guess that set me on the road to wanting to just collect records and collect music of all kinds, really. Yeah, I mean, another couple that I really value. I mean, these were probably two of the earliest, probably two of the first records I ever owned. I mean, you've got the New Seekers here. Look what they've done to my Songma, which is their version of the Melanie Safka song. And yeah, I mean, this is 1972, so I'd have been 4 years old. And I love this record. I absolutely love it. In fact, I still like this record now. I will put this record on pretty much any time. Not that I do these days, but I would do, and it would just transport me straight back to being a kid. And that warm feeling of sitting there with headphones on, or just sat there listening to the music when I could get on it, when my brother and sister weren't trying to get on the family stereo. But there were times when they were out and I could put it on, and it was like, yeah, your little moments, your little times to escape into another world, of listening to music that you enjoyed at the time, but those kind of warm, fuzzy feelings, which I guess is all, is all sort of wrapped up with nostalgia and memories and everything, is just massively abundant in all these records that I'm showing. So again, this is what, a 50p record. You could probably pick it up even cheaper at a car boot, 10p maybe. But yeah, so there's no intrinsic value to this record at all. But the music and particularly the memories, for me, are absolutely priceless. So yeah, I value the music hugely. Even though, as I say, it's not a record that I would choose to put on every day. Again, another one, this Wendy Craig story album. Story albums were very much, an early part of my musical kind of education, which sounds ridiculously pretentious. But these are records that my mum and dad would buy for me when I was little, as I did with my son. Storybook records and records with sort of children's songs on and so on. To help you go to sleep, be sort of soporific, and gently, narrated and all the rest of it. This was really something else. It wasn't, Wendy Craig, great English comic actress from the 60s and 70s. Still going now, but obviously that was, I guess, her heyday. But she was chosen to asked to do a story album, and yeah, she said, well, yes, I will do it, but it's got to be stories that I want to do, that I really feel something for. And so she chose all these stories, and they're from all over the world. I mean, you've got one called Iwangalema, a story from Zambia, Bamboo Cutter and the Maid from Japan, Prince Christian and the Pirates from England, Day the Water Disappeared from Australia, The Old Lady and the Tramp from Sweden, and The Jester Who Fooled the King from Poland. So, it was kind of teaching me about, different cultures and, all these countries, and yeah, wow, and, she sort of put on voices and accents and things. And, um, yeah, it's just kind of transportative, effect, really was, a sort of 4 or 5 year old listening to this stuff. And, yeah, wonderful. So yeah, I just hugely value that. Um, and that's probably why when I got back into vinyl buying again, I wanted to get these kind of things. So yeah, Oliver Postgate stuff, because again, it's the storytelling and that element. I mean, the beauty of both of these soundtrack records is that it's the nostalgia for the not only the stories and the kind of the model making and the whole way that these were kind of put together. Peter Furman and Oliver Postgate, in a little barn, in a corner, and just everything was kind of hand knitted and homemade, and just very holistic, the way it was almost kind of put together. And it's just fantastic, and it gives it almost like a kind of spirituality that just transcends everyday existence and life. These were really life affirming kind of programs. Watching these when I was a kid, it's just amazing. Absolutely wonderful. And yeah, I just want to go back there. Yeah, absolutely. And love the kind of earthy folkiness of the music on this, and it's just so honest, and there's an innocence about it, childlike. Yeah, absolutely. They were made for children, but it keeps the child within you alive, which is just so important. It really is, and I just crave that. Whenever I can get it. So yeah, and then of course, later on, into the 80s, I started to hang around with people who were kind of older than me, and had been at sort of uni and so on, and they were into some really wacky, far out stuff. So, I was starting to be kind of, I'd go around to their house and there'd be the old going, and, I'd be presented with stuff like this, David Vorhaus, White Noise. I mean, what the hell, I didn't really get it, if I'm honest. I mean, it was kind of, I suppose I sort of got into it because I was probably getting stoned to it, or whatever, but I didn't really understand it or wholly appreciate it, I guess. And the same with this, which I discovered years later. Can Tega Mega, I never got this at all. This was just such a, such a for me, a kind of, a million miles away from that, or that, or even that, just on another plane completely. And I wasn't ready for it, but then 30 years down the line of sort of being in the VC and being subjected to, and and I started to get a real appreciation for it, and now I can listen to this and I can wholeheartedly say that this is an absolute masterpiece. Um, it's just brilliant, you know. It's I find it both strange, incredibly strange, and yet accessible at the same time, which is I think a really strange, is a rare thing for bands to be able to do that. You know, I mean, it's not exactly a pop record, but then, you think of a track like Hallelujah and the way that the Happy Mondays completely took that and made a career out of it. Well, there you go. But yeah, I mean, I have to blame I have to blame the VC for for getting me into sort of into jazz and much more left field stuff, but I'm really grateful for it because even though I'd kind of been, as I said, I'd been exposed to that kind of stuff before, I wasn't particularly ready for it. And I was just I'd got to the stage whereby I'd kind of listened to so much sort of rock, so much pop, so much kind of very regular kind of conventional kind of rock and pop music, that I was just kind of hungry for something new, something different that was going to pull me in another direction. And that's the amazing thing ultimately about collecting records, is that there's that constant thirst to hear new music, to have that experience again. I find I very rarely get an experience where I get that kind of almost like childlike wonder with a record, that I've not heard that I've never heard before. Something that stops you in your tracks. I think probably listening to the first Judy Sill album 4 or 5 years ago was came pretty close. That did. That was a pretty life affirming moment for me musically. But yeah, I mean, there are ones like that, and there's ones that I go back to as well, and think, I missed that. I didn't hear that when I heard that when I was listening to that before, and that is the amazing thing about music and records, is that when you get a really interesting record, you can just keep listening to it again and again, and you'll always hear something new or fresh that you've never heard before, and that's what kind of keeps me collecting and wanting to keep listening to music ultimately, because it's chasing that wonderment, that escapism, that you know transcendental experience, if you like. Yeah, it's a wonderful thing. But yeah, I mean, certainly I mean, both Dale and Alan alluded to this, where and I think Alan started off his video by saying, he was pulling all these records, these random record um, pulls that he does, and he was kind of thinking like, well, do I really need all these records? Do I listen to them? Do I, how often do I listen to these records? And I suppose when your kind of collection is sort of exponentially sort of increased to the size where mine is nearly up to 1,000 records, which I know is probably quite small in comparison to a lot of, veteran VCers and people with much, much larger collections. Um, you sort of think, well, what, I'm spending all this money, and am I, how often am I playing them? How often am I actually getting to listen, to rotate these records, to absorb them, to take them in? And then you sort of, end up having a purge, but then sometimes I regret purging those records and then 2-3 years later, I'll end up buying them again or upgrading them, which is something that I'm kind of doing now. And I don't know whether this is kind of I've sort of mentioned this before. I don't know whether this is me getting older and appreciating the aesthetics a bit more. But when I first got back into vinyl, I'd just pick up anything, and I wouldn't care about the condition. As you know, obviously, if it was scratched to hell and looked like it had been used as a, you know, like a Brillo pad or something, I wouldn't pick it up. But you know, I wasn't that fussy. But now I'm like, you know, yeah, I've got to get the sleeves in really nice condition. I want the records, you know, as clean as I can get them. I mean, I've got a record cleaning machine, so I can usually clean things up fairly well. But yeah, but then I sort of, I don't want to become sort of whereby, you know, it's sort of, you know, style over content. You know, the condition is more important than the record itself. You know, at the end of the day, it has to be the music first. The music is the most important thing because that's what connects us. That's what got us into the hobby in the first place. You know, it wasn't just for nice packages and inserts and, you know, box sets and all the rest of it. Although obviously, you know, the collector in us likes to kind of, you know, accumulate those sort of things. So, but yeah, I mean, I'll probably wrap it up now because I've been going on for a long time. But yeah, it's you know, I will carry on buying records. I will continue my journey wherever that takes me. And I'm very grateful to everybody in the VC who takes the time to talk about the music and the records, because ultimately that's inspired me to go out in directions that I hitherto would probably not have gone in, you know. So I'm very grateful for that. But yes, I think I need to slow down a bit with my buying. Unfortunately, COVID again, Dale alluded to that, and several people have mentioned that, you know, being locked down and having the Amazon account was just far too easy just to sort of pick stuff up on a whim and spend all that money that we can maybe ill afford to spend. But you know, I think the pleasure that we all get out of it far outweighs the outlay financially, I guess. I don't know. Speaking for myself anyway, but there you go. Anyway, guys, so I hope some of you found that interesting. Thanks to Alan for obviously coming out with the question in the first place and putting that to us. So thanks, Alan. And yeah, until next time, guys, I'll see you soon.